So he said, well, I can't do anything about it, I'll have to put it up the ladder. I said, thank you very much. 4 days later, my wife got a phone call. My wife, I have to tell you, hates what I'm doing with a vengeance. She thinks that we are all going to be machine gunned in our beds and that my children will be prevented from getting a reasonably good job. So she hates it. So it's quite warm in my house on occasions. But I said to him, fine. But she took a phone call from the police station. They said, tell your husband that it will be a waste of our time dealing with this, so we're not going to. So she said to them, don't talk to me about it, I don't want to know. Talk to my husband, I'll give you his mobile number. Well, they already had all my contact details anyway. But they said, no, we don't want to talk to your husband. So I wrote the chief superintendent for the area a letter and told him I would like an interview with him as soon after the Christmas holiday as it was possible to get it, so that he could explain to me why it was that his officers were so unprepared to uphold the law, why his officers were unprepared to uphold the law of this country, and why they were showing such a total lack of professionalism as to not to want to talk to me, particularly after I'd driven the 15 miles from my home to his police station and then had to drive the 15 miles back again to report these crimes. I got a letter from a Superintendent Trotman. Now, Superintendent Trotman had been on Radio Oxford the day before saying that he had been a Royal Marine. Very silly. They told me in the services, never volunteer anything, information included. And Superintendent Trotman said he discussed it with Sergeant Thomas, and it was political, and I should take it up with my Member of Parliament. So I wrote him a letter. I said, you are absolutely right. I do not want to be in the European Union. Indeed, our constitutional law forbids it, because it says, among other things, Parliament may do many things, but what they may not do is surrender any of their rights to govern to a foreign power unless we have been defeated in war. And then I said to him, as a Royal Marine, you will have been taught that we haven't lost a war since 1066. And even then the man had some claim to the throne. And as a Royal Marine, you will have been taught that the Royal Marines have for the last 300 years been distinguishing themselves around the world, making sure that we do not win wars, that we lose wars, we only win them. Told you he shouldn't have told me he was a Royal Marine. I want to see you. Because failure to investigate these serious allegations of crime is a serious neglect of duty under the police discipline codes and the criminal offence of misprision of treason. This is not a threat, it is merely a statement of fact. Now, for the police discipline code offence, he loses his job and his pension, and for the misprision of treason, he spends the rest of his life in prison. Well, a couple of days later, I got a phone call from his assistant, a woman police constable. She said, what exactly do you want? I said, I want to turn on my television for the 6 o'clock news, and I want to see Douglas Hurd in handcuffs wearing with a policeman's hand on the top of his head, helping him into the back of a police car. And 10 months later, I want to see him and a few others on trial for their lives at the Old Bailey. She said to me, well, we've discussed this with the Crown Prosecution Service, and they say they can't prosecute it, which I knew. It has to be the Attorney General, which I also knew. And they don't think that the Attorney General will prosecute it. So I said, well, in that case, I trust we can rely upon Thames Valley Police to do what the ratent taxpayers of this country are paying them an awful lot of money to do, which is to arrest the Attorney General for perverting the course of justice and misprision of treason. Even the Attorney General is not above the law. Right, they said, we'll push this through to special branch. There's an inspector in special branch who's based here, and we'll put it to him. I'm sorry, I can't remember the man's name off the top of my head at this precise moment in time. So I said, well, give me his number and I'll phone him. And she said, hang on a minute, he just walked past the door. I said, well, go and get him. And she did. And he said to me, he said, oh, yes, I know about this. He said, I've allocated an officer to look into this. It's a woman detective constable. And I thought, hello, give it to the bottom of the pile, yeah? Not that I'm saying anything against women detective constables, because some of you girls make very good detectives. And she can't see you for 3 weeks because she's very, very busy. So I said, give her my phone number, tell her if I haven't heard from her within 5 days, I'm submitting a formal allegation against her for serious neglect of duty. Well, 2 hours later, I got a phone call from her. It's amazing what can happen when you understand the system, isn't it? And she said, of course, she said, I'm very, very busy, you know. I don't think I can get to you for 3 weeks. I said, if you are not standing in front of me within 5 days, I will submit a formal allegation. There is nothing that you are dealing with today, even murder, which is more important than this. Because we are not talking about the murder of an individual, we are talking about the murder of an entire country. Well, I got a phone call the following afternoon, and she said, can I come and see you? I've got a 2-hour window. So I phoned David Barnby, and I said, David, they're coming to see me. Can you get round here? And he flashed round as quick as he could. I don't think he's ever moved so fast in his life. And we both gave statements to the police saying we would be more than prepared to give evidence in a court. And it died. And I wrote letters, and I wrote letters, and I wrote letters. And I made phone calls, and they died. Nowhere. After 5 months, I said, if I do not get a reply within the next 2 days, I will submit formal allegations against the officers in Thames Valley Police for serious neglect of duty and misprision of treason. And I got a letter from Superintendent Trotman, a pure figment of his imagination, because he said in his letter that he has a prerogative to decide what crimes he does and does not investigate. A lie. Every holder of the office of constable in this country is required to record every reasonable allegation of crime. Obviously, if somebody says, officer, officer, a little spaceship topped up over my garden, a little man flew down a blue beam of light and stole all my garden gnomes, then obviously you refer him to the nearest hospital with a psychiatric wing. But anything other than that, it is recorded and it is investigated, because that is what the law of this country says has to happen. He then went on to say that he wasn't prepared to reallocate his resources to investigate it, and that the difficulty of obtaining witnesses was such that because they were all dead, that it wasn't worth investigating it. They're not all dead, half of them are alive well in the House of Lords. Lord Howe, Douglas Hurd, St John Stevens, Margaret Thatcher. They're all in the House of Lords. They're all part of his government when he did this, and because government insists on collective responsibility for their ministers, they're all equally guilty of the crime. So, I walked into my local police station. I'd like to see the inspector. They said, well, he's not in. What's it about? I said, I want to submit a formal allegation against Superintendent Trotman at St Aldgates Police Station of a serious neglect of duty and misprision of treason. Well, I hadn't got home when my mobile went. It was the inspector. He walked through the door. What's this all about? I'll come and see you. Where are you? I'm in the police station. When can you come in? I'll be right there. Turned around and went in.